Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. My guest today is Dr. Michelle Martin Boner. She's a three-time #1 best-selling author, executive coach, speaker, consultant, and transformational leader with more than 30 years of experience in leadership development, organizational strategy, workforce culture, and professional growth. She is a contributing author in the Amazon best-selling anthologies Overcomer Women 2.0, 90 Days Biblical Affirmations, and Dear Little Girl in Me, which reached #1 in new releases in Christian Living and Personal Growth on Amazon. Michelle is also the CEO of AMMEmpowerment, a consulting firm focused on leadership development, executive coaching, culture transformation, and organizational empowerment. Her experience spans corporate, nonprofit, legal, educational, and ministry sectors, and you name it. She's a member of Forbes Coaches Council, and she's recognized for helping individuals and organizations move from vision to execution while leading with authenticity, clarity, and impact. Hello, Michelle, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me today.
Well, I'm very excited, as I always say, because every time I read a bio, I'm like, oh, I'm so lucky I get to talk to this incredibly I'm inspired already by reading your bio, so I can predict this is going to be a great episode of Back to Basics. I mean, there's so many facets to you that I definitely, want to start always at the beginning. Who was Michelle before all these titles, degrees, books, and accomplishments? And what part of that little girl is still very present in you today? What part of that passion that little girl had is still there?
That little girl started a long time ago, and she actually started being a leader and a protector and an advocator in grade school.
Oh, wow.
And I always was the one to protect against the bullies. I didn't let other kids bully other kids, and I was a skinny little knock-kneed little girl, and I started way back then.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good. You're the one you wanted to be close to, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And, that little girl still exists. She still exists in a number of ways, and just in terms of just finding her way and finding ways to encourage others and support each other. And so that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am.
And I love that because people I find that like protection, empowerment, inspiring, normally they can bake that no matter what professional journey they took, right? So I normally talk a lot and try to dissect with my guests about career choice, because we have a lot of young adults that have to make that decision. What should I choose? And my message is always, no matter what you do, you can pivot. It doesn't define you. You can change careers midway. And as an executive coach, I'm sure this is a lot of what you talk about, and we'll dig into all those 3 books that you have author or co-author. But when the time came to make your professional choice, your degree, to study something, how did you go around that, and how did then that transfer into adulthood?
Well, I always wanted to be a lawyer since I was 12 years old. And that was motivation from watching Andrew Young when he was an ambassador to the UN. And he was advocating for Indigenous people. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to help people whose rights have been infringed upon and they're taking them. And I always knew since I was a little girl that I did want to go to law school. But before that, I decided that I needed to go, of course, to college. And so I studied business. I studied business because business is something that everybody needs, and you just never know. And to be able to take those principles, whether you go into a corporation or even if you decide to be an entrepreneur, those are principles that you can use throughout life. And so that was a choice. But then I also went back later and got my Master of Arts in Christian Education as a minister because I wanted to build upon the foundation that I had grown up in. So I grew up Catholic, and I wanted to just know more. I wanted to know what people believed, because if I knew what they believed, then I could be there, and I could be a help, an example, a support. I could volunteer. And it's just always good to understand where people are. So.
I personally find that super fascinating that, from that background, then you decide to take these masters, and people will say, do people take masters on these, on what's the official title again? Can you repeat it? I don't want to.
So I got a Master of Arts in Christian Education.
Christian Education. And I love that. I'm a fellow Catholic. I'm a believer of Jesus, and so I am fascinated. I always say it's a great blueprint for anybody, even if you don't believe just who he was as a man. But to get that itch to pursue that, and I just honestly find it very fascinating. Was there any surprising factors of a master's in that you either surprised you for the good and for the bad? Like, oh, I never thought this was going to be this way, for one way or the other.
For the masters, I really enjoyed it, but then it was also eye-opening to really see the different beliefs and faiths that people had. But my thing was, if I knew and understood the foundation of what people believe, then I could always draw them with the love of Christ, regardless.
Well, that's fascinating. Well, I would say it's funny. I'm taping this episode, but and I'm gonna give a shout out to my friend Kelly, who lives in Utah, and she gave me a Mormon 101 class. Now that I went, and she took me to temple and explained so many things, and I was just loving it. And we both had a dinner discussing each other's faith, each other's beliefs, and it was just so amazing that we both at the end of the day said, this is awesome that we can each discuss our faith and what we believe in and the similarities, and then not so much. And I just felt so happy because it brings you, to your point, closer to who the other person is, because that shapes you so much into who you are, right? And so I just fascinated that now this is the first podcast I tape after I came back and had that eye-opening experience, to be honest. So. Yeah. So you do this master. So I know that the timeline is never one after the other, but I'm sure there are things that are starting to happen. You want to find, I read somewhere you helping people make things happen makes you happy, which is a little bit the whole purpose of why I have this podcast, is getting people unstuck from a situation or making the impossible possible by way of just trusting in yourself and in the divine so much that you abandon yourself to whatever comes and then letting it happen. So tell me a little bit more about that part, like being happy about helping people and your coaching and how, even the books come about.
Yeah, well, in the coaching, in life, you can either give advice or you can coach.
Okay.
I
like that.
There's a difference. And coaching, you're really helping someone on the journey. You're not making the decisions, and you're not telling them what to do. You're just guiding them and providing options for them. And when people are at that place where, they're trying to decide or figure out what their next is, I think in coaching, it's just good to be able to help them understand what the possibilities are. And what does that entail? Well, first of all, looking at themselves, looking at what are your skill sets, what are your talents, and do you really know? And so, doing an assessment, because oftentimes we may have skills that we don't think about that we can use in order to make some decisions about what our next may be. And so whether you were downsized or you were let go, or you're just frustrated and you feel like you need to do something different, you start by assessing what are your skill sets and are you really maximizing them, and are you using them in a way that you're going to get some gratification out of what you're doing.
That makes a lot of sense. And so I'm curious, when you are coaching somebody that has a very successful career, because I hear this over and over in episodes with guests and even in my own conversations, and they say, I'm very successful, but I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. I'm doing this for the paycheck. And it's very difficult to have the courage to maybe leave a cozy job where you're getting paid, to really pursue something that you are more passionate about. And then we know that we get this saboteur, as I call it, and I know coaches call it, where you convince yourself that, well, I cannot do this because I have to pay the bills. I encounter that to be like the number one excuse, which is a very valid excuse. But then you hear so many people that say, I was jobless and then I did this and and now I found my purpose. So how do you get somebody that's in that mindset kind of unstuck?
Well, for somebody in that mindset, let's be realistic. I would never tell anybody to quit a paying job, especially when they have those responsibilities, right? Because that creates a lot of unnecessary stress that they don't need. But I would coach them to begin doing what it is they believe that they're passionate about, but doing it concurrently, doing it at the same time. So that means, just like if you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, okay, well, that means that you're going to have to make some sacrifices. That means that you're going to have to set aside some time, right? So that means you're going to have to maybe work some off hours, work during the times where you're off from your, regular paying job, right? In order to begin building what it is that you really desire and what you really want. And so, like I said, I would never tell anybody to just stop and just totally quit. Not now, not in this economy, not in this world. But if they can begin to make some sacrifices, start building a plan, write the vision and make it plain, and then begin to try to execute the plan.
Yeah, I think that's, and for the record, me neither, but I find that a lot of, we need so much less than what we think. And I know people that are very wealthy already, and they still say, I need the paying job. And I say, no, you don't. You can survive for a few years, but it's very stressful to think, I think also it has to do with the identity. And I don't know what your take it is, but I feel that there are a lot of people out there that their job, they are their job. The identity they have created around themselves is highly dependent on that job that they have or that they have held. And so it's not so much about not paying the bills, that's the excuse, but it's about who am I going to be when I'm jobless and I don't have this identity to hide behind.
Well, I hear that and I see that a lot. A lot of people can't separate the two, but you have to. A job is what you do. It's not who you are. Mm-hmm. And understanding that, that job, if something happens to you today, that job will continue.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. And I know that, and then on your website, I saw something like, you say one of your superpowers is like working across party lines and dealing with toxic situations. And I know this is something you hear more and more, like toxicity and like walk away of situations. What have you seen in your job, and what kind of advice do you have from situations that can really result in a bad state for oneself?
Well, right now, let me just say the state of the world is in chaos. And people are unhinged. There's a lot of uncertainty. And even now, I will see where politics is one that really can be toxic. And from that, I would just say the best way to approach a situation like that, where it is toxic, is to first know who you are, know where you stand, But then also remember that you cannot force your views on another person. And if you can listen and listen without judgment, because that's very, very important in order to not be drawn into a situation where it becomes really toxic. And then there's also a point where you have to be able to say, you know what? I can't change anyone else, but I can control me.
That's good. Yeah. That is how you react. You can choose how you react to certain situations. I think that's very powerful. So let's move about. Let's talk about your book. So it's most people have one. You don't have one. You have 3-time #1 Amazon best-selling author. So which one was the first one? And tell us a little bit of each one of them.
The first one was the 90 Days Biblical Affirmations. And it's an anthology with some other women. And I love the fact that we use the Bible and use these affirmations to not only encourage ourselves, but to encourage others. And so mine actually is day 14. And one of my favorite scriptures is, "The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing," Psalm 23:1. And really, it's about, we have everything that we need, but it's what do we do with it, right? It's how do we use the resources around us in order to accomplish what we need. And so for me, when I say that, like you were saying earlier, I have all this, degrees and all the education, that doesn't make me who I am, but I do take those things and now I'm using them to help other people. And so I have everything that I need.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And one thing I would share, it's that we minimize being that you're a believer, not believer, but the Bible is such a great book. And sometimes people take it just for the religion, but the wisdom that book has is incredible. And I always challenge. It took me 4 years to read it cover to cover, I admit it, and I still kind of forgot half of it because some parts are like really hard to get. But it's just so empowering to take the book as a book beyond the religion content and who Jesus, some believe it is, some believe, no, read it as a book. And I think I know people that have done it and have been so surprised, like everything I need to know is in the Bible, like even simple advice about situations. What do you agree with that? What's your take on the Bible?
I do agree with it. And I don't look at it just for religion or faith or belief, but the principles, right? The leadership principles. Jesus Christ was the ultimate servant leader. He made sure he had 3 years to build a team. And building that team, he had to make sure that they were equipped, they were prepared, they had the resources, and then they could go out and execute God's plan, right? And those are basic leadership principles.
I love that. I love that. I would say like Oprah, that's tweetable. Jesus had 3 years to build a team. That's amazing. It's true. It's true. And I mean, this has been said before, but the fact that he was the real first influencer with none of the tools we have. And 2026 years later, we still talk about him. We still study what he did. People, as you say, follow his leadership, follow his guide. That is so incredible.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. To this very day, those principles are ones that we can use. He led with integrity. He led with love. He led with compassion, respect, and wisdom and service. And so those are some very, very necessary leadership skills.
Absolutely. And some of those teachings, to go back to like why people are so unhappy, sometimes it's like we don't follow the most basic advice, like, right? Like treat others as you want to be treated. Like that's so basic. And you mentioned the word or the phrase servant leadership. And I'm now past 300 episodes of this podcast, luckily. And that has been one of the most recurring aspects of people that are happy, that are fulfilled, is being of service to others, being of service. So it keeps coming up and up and up in so many different ways and colors. And for whatever reason, we tend to only serve if there's something in it for us. And it doesn't work like that. Like the real fulfillment comes when there's nothing in it for you and you're really doing it because you want to.
Exactly, exactly. And that's so important. I mean, people, we see it all the time, every day. People can be really selfish, but being selfish actually gets you nothing. And it's proven time and time again, when you give and you give openly and you give freely, it will come back to you. And I think about that just in any leadership role, when you give and you give authentically and you show up and you care about your team, and they can actually feel that. When people feel valued, when they feel seen, when they feel that you've heard them, they're going to really be there, and you're going to have that buy-in, right? Because that's influence, but it's influence in a way to help you accomplish the mission and the goal. And just like Jesus, he showed up, he gave love, he was there, he provided them with the knowledge, and they were like, we are doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's incredible. So definitely that's something that I would look to buy, because those daily affirmations are super powerful no matter what. And then, if they come from that kind of wisdom, kudos to you. No wonder it's an Amazon bestseller. So then you help the anthologies Overcomer Women 2.0. Tell us about that.
This one was really a compilation of stories of women who have gone through some challenges in life. And who hasn't gone through challenges in life, right? We all have things that we have to overcome. And each one is a little different. And mine is actually about a time in my life where I had to deal with my son's father. We weren't together anymore, and he was difficult. And when children are involved, you have to find a way to make things happen. But it's also about forgiveness as well. And again, those principles, when you forgive and you're able to move on, that is what Overcomer Woman is. And so that was a chapter in my life that I healed from and overcame. And it was only by the grace of God and prayer and the word.
That it's, well, I was going to ask you about that, because, everybody says, especially coaches and people that like to get others, help others. They think they don't have it easy. They have it easy. Like they feel, oh, these people has it all figured out. But usually that wisdom comes from very severe pain, suffering, difficult experiences where you have to really see it through. And that's why then you can inspire others, and you can come through, for better. And it's incredible what can come from suffering.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, just throughout life. I mean, life is not perfect. And some people like to say life be lifing. Well, we have to not quit. We cannot give up. And we have to stand firm on what we believe. And challenges develop us. Mm-hmm. We would love for things to be really easy, but is it really worth it? But when you think about what Christ went through in order and the price that he paid, he was being developed, but then the ultimate outcome was something that we could never repay. And so when we're going through challenges and we think about what he went through versus what we're going through, we couldn't handle what he went through. But things that we're doing and dealing with, no matter if it's a divorce or trauma or abuse, whatever it is, know that God is in it if you have faith, and that he will get you to the other side. But you also have to be willing. You have to be open and not give up. But also have people around you who also have the same type of faith and will help you on the journey.
That's beautiful. And I do agree that I think one of the connections for people that maybe are lacking in their faith or doubting is we cannot get help unless we ask for help. Like that is one thing, because we were made with free will. That's how our Creator intended us to be. And so sometimes people say, well, I don't get any help. And you cannot get help that you don't ask for. And this is something a lot of us struggle in our day-to-day life, like just asking help from a spouse, from a friend, from a parent. So how do we expect, even if you don't believe in Jesus, the universe, right? Call it the law of attraction or whatever else we believe. If we don't tell the universe or the greater entity what we're lacking or what we need, it's going to be very hard just by common sense that we're going to get it.
Exactly. And you know what? Asking for help is a strength.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy. And the way he does that is with isolation. And he makes us think that, oh, nobody cares. Nobody wants to know. Well, that's a lie. That's not true. There are people still on this earth and on this planet who actually want to help, genuinely want to help others. And so asking for help, that's a strength. It's not a weakness. And I hope that anyone who is listening, they know and understand that that's just a deception. They're not alone, and that there really are people who genuinely have a heart and they want to give and they want to support.
I love that. I love that. And that's such a good advice. And you know that if you do want people around you or community or others, like you can find your tribe. You just have to go out and find it. And then you'll never be alone anymore. And I think that's a big discovery when you're open to others. So I wonder, you talk and you work with so many people, leaders. What have you discovered to be like maybe an insecurity or something, or a lie that we tell ourselves that gets people like in that bad place?
A lot of times what I see is that people are insecure about how they show up among their peers. So they feel like they're not good enough or they're not as smart as others. I've seen that quite often. And when individuals really want help and they want to overcome that, I do my best to get them to really look at themselves internally and to not compare themselves, to not get into the comparison game. Because when you start comparing yourself to other people, you're always going to have shortcomings. But each and every one of us was uniquely made. And when we know that and we understand that, and we understand that we all have certain gifts, certain talents that we bring to the table, when they come together with all the others, that creates a solution, that creates a great team. And you should never compare yourself to other people. And that happens a lot. That's where that insecurity shows up. And then it creates some of that toxicity we talked about a little earlier, because it shows up and it comes out in different ways. And no, don't compare yourself to anybody else, because you are unique and wonderfully made. Your gifts are your gifts. My gifts are my gifts. And when we bring them together, what a wonderful, wonderful solution. And I'll even compare, flowers we can make.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's, I couldn't agree more. Very, very nice reflection. I always tell my kids, don't strive to do the same thing, cookie cutter, like checklist, like even at school, like you should do this, you should be part of this club. I say, if you do the same thing that everybody's doing, how are you going to be different? Go for a different approach, because that's going to come in handy at some point. And so I always try, I think that embracing our uniqueness is definitely a superpower, but one has to be courageous, because you're going to eventually have to deal with the fear of missing out if you make a mistake, if you bite into making a mistake.
But, even if you make a mistake, right, if you learn from it, if you take that as a lesson, and that is something that's really bad, because right now, even with our young people, peer pressure is so heavy on them. But it's like, no, it's okay if you're not perfect. And that's where, for me, I think the faith comes in. No one is perfect. Give yourself some grace.
And that's perfect, because your third book, or well, I don't know if I told them in the orders that they were, but the one that really I love the name is Dear Little Girl in Me. So it's obviously, I think, very personal. So tell us about that.
Well, this was another anthology, again, with some beautiful women in ministry and business. And this particular book, my chapter, this one is when I was a little girl. I hid money under the mattress.
Uh-huh.
That's how I saved my money. I just always wanted to have my own money. But my mom and my twin kind of laughed and made fun of me. And it was like, wait a minute, that's just, my way of making sure, because I came from a single parent household, that I always had money. And then when I thought about it, though, it kind of made me feel some kind of way. It's like, wait a minute. Why is that, a big deal? And so that's why I always say that it's important how we respond to our children. It's important that we're conscious about what we say, because those things, those words will stay with them, right, throughout life, and they might not even think about it. And so for this instance, really what God was doing was he was teaching me how to steward my finances.
I like that. And what do you think that the little girl in Michelle still needs to hear from that woman you are today? Like,
oh,
piece
wow.
of advice.
I would say trust and believe that you are who God created you to be. And he's given you so many gifts and talents, and you are not to be like anyone else. Don't try to be like anyone else. Be who I created you to be, and that will always be your superpower. That will always be your strength. And when you show up and you show up uniquely and authentic, you will always be successful because you're looking to me and not to anything or anyone else.
Well said. Well said. And somebody with such a strong faith, I want to ask you this question, and I share at the beginning, I'm Venezuelan, so I also do a shout out here for the victims of the terrible earthquakes that have hit Venezuela, Colombia, and the Philippines, unfortunately. But, we've had to live through the past months where I've seen entire families wiped away. Mom, dad, kids, or parents losing both their only two children. I mean, the tragedy, it's incredible, with over 7,000 people. I don't know. I lost counts. I think the official count is 6,000 in Venezuela, but there's many more disappear. When that moment comes, even the strongest, the most faithful people will, of course, rebel against God and say, why? Why this? This is not fair. We tend to go into the fairness, and I've done everything right. I've behaved. How do we, and this is more as a Christian, so this is more on the Christian faith, like how do we deal with that when our Father delivers a test that seems really, really unfair?
Well, life is finite and God is infinite, and bad things happen to good people, and we never know why. And sometimes we'll never know why or have the answer, but I would lean on my faith. And for those who don't, I would ask them to try to find some foundation or belief where if they're still here for a reason. They're still here to honor those that are no longer here. But then if you do have faith, know that God is a comforter and that he will embrace and he will comfort those. He heals the brokenhearted. But again, we have to be willing to do that, to give it to him. And grieving is a process. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to change. And it's all part of the life cycle, but we do have to believe in something. And so for me, it's believing in God. It's believing that he is a comforter, but then also believing that he has those around us that can help us get through it. And we may never have the answer for it because we're seeing earthquakes, we're seeing wars and lives that are being lost. But we have to trust and believe that even in that God is in the midst of it and that he will bring us through it and he is our strength.
That's a very, very good thought, and not putting you on the spot, but since this is a deeply spiritual talk, more, obviously I have how somebody, and I know I've had to advise people on this, but it's a hard one. It's like when people say, I know I'm missing something, I want to believe in something, but I wasn't raised anything. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. For somebody that maybe was raised in a certain faith, they went away, then maybe they find their way back. Some people, they just by way of encountering friends or spouses. But there are people that really don't know where to start. So for those out there that may be hearing this and they say, yes, I do want a closer connection. I just don't know to what or how. What would you advise?
Well, you said it earlier, we were given free will. And I would say first, start by asking yourself, where are you? And then what are you seeking? Ask yourself those questions. What are you seeking? And how do you think that you can find it? But then I would also say, visit places of worship, visit different houses of worship, right? Because, okay, so I did my master's thesis on the Tower of Babel. And how man was trying to build a tower to get to God, right? Mm-hmm. And then he said, wait a minute, no, I made you smart, but you're not smart and you're not me, right? And then he dispersed them into different languages, right? And so they went their separate ways in different countries because he created diversity. Mm-hmm. And so there's one God, one faith, one baptism, but he dispersed and he created that diversity. And we can still find him, but we have to actually do the work and seek him out.
I think that's very good. And I started that way. So I never know. That's what I love about my conversations and my guests, because the conversation can take us many places. But this is why I started. I mean, I was born and raised Catholic, went to Catholic school, but I'm fascinated and I love to learn about other religions. So I am grateful that I haven't lost the curiosity to learn about other faiths, other religions. That doesn't mean I'm compromising mine or where I'm standing, but it means I'm open to learning. And so I think that curiosity, which what you just said, just go, visit, because there's going to be something that's going to resonate as truth in your heart. And you're going to know when that's something that you're looking for presents itself.
Exactly. And what I found right now is a lot of young people, they're seeking, right? And they're going to get it, and they're going to get it in a different way. They might get it in a different way than you did. They might get it different than I did, but at least they're seeking. Mm-hmm. And they're seeking in their own way, and it's being open to receive.
Absolutely. So since we never start seeking, what are you seeking now that we haven't spoken about? So you've written books, you are the CEO of your own organization, which we haven't spoken about, but this is your chance. What haven't we discussed? Because we went into very philosophical. I can see we can have several series here on different subjects, but what it's exciting you, where you're working on that you want to share with the audience?
Right now, I would love to share the work on the leadership because, again, I believe that through faith, and a lot of the principles are based on just being authentic, integrity, character, having character. And I would love for people to visit my website I do have a free checklist there at AMMEmpowerment.org. I also have my books that are there available as well. And I also have a workbook that is there. So if you want some tips and some tools, you can get those if you go to my website at AMMEmpowerment.org. And again, just know that everything that I do it so that I can serve others.
Beautiful. Well, my last question always is about what makes us tick. So I can tell that it's a good interview where I feel and that the audience also feels that faith and serving others and helping makes you tick, undoubtedly. Anything else that when you have that bad day and that you're confused and it's chaotic and it happens to us all, like we forget who we are, why we're here, why I'm doing this. What helps you reconnecting to your essence?
Journaling. Mm-hmm. Journal. I try to journal every day. And when I journal, it reminds me of who I am, whose I am. And even if I've had a rough day, I always know that I can talk to God.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, beautiful. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for sharing your journey, your wisdom, your leadership, and also your gifts, because as I say, everything is going to be on the show notes, but I'm sure that people are going to go to get those checklists, because you've been able to really synthesize very actionable things we can do to be more fulfilled and more aligned to each other. So thank you so much for being part of Back to Basics.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And to all of you out there, please rate and review this episode if you enjoy. Share it with somebody that you know is going to benefit from it. You also can help inspire somebody else that needs it. So thanks for tuning in, and until a new episode of Back to Basics. Bye-bye. You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit LeticiaLatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.